Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a new long filing from Kilmar Abrego Garcia that lays out just a Job-like concatenation of terrible treatment at the hands of both El Salvador jailers and the United States that goes on, and that now is playing out in two different jurisdictions. Tennessee, where he's been charged in a criminal case, and Maryland, where the judge who had his initial habeas corpus case after he was sent down to El Salvador is, he hopes, still in a position to grant him some relief. Okay, a sort of story that's making the headlines, and understandably so, is his really harrowing account of what happened to him in this high-tech hellhole in El Salvador. So recall, he was just disappeared to there. We didn't know what was going on with him for a couple months. He now says what was going on is he was basically being tortured and subjected to what we would call cruel and unusual punishment, and that no civilized society would employ. So he's denied bathroom access and soiled himself, as he puts it. He and other prisoners are in metal bunks with no mattresses, all crowded in there like sardines. We've seen a picture of the bunks. The bright lights remain on there for 24 hours a day. There's an episode where they're made to basically kneel all night long, and if they fall over and sleep, they're beaten and made to come back. In 2 weeks, he loses 31 pounds. So this is what was happening to him when he was down there, and the U.S. was saying to the courts, oh, there's no problem. He belongs there anyway because he's an MS-13 member, or whatever series of concoctions they were trying to use to justify. Also, by the way, on this supposed gang membership notion that Trump himself said, he has some evidence in there that the guards told him, yes, we know you're not a gang member. These are not the right tattoos, the ones that you recall that Trump sort of displayed. Okay, so we now know, or at least he now alleges, a treatment down in El Salvador that it strikes me the U.S. is surely morally responsible for, and probably legally responsible for, if he wanted to just sue them in some kind of damages. But that's the least that's going on for him now, because he wants, and he's, trying to hold on by his fingernails to not be deported to a third country, which the U.S. has said it now wants to do. So he's got these criminal charges against him. The U.S. said he has to be kept in jail while we prepare for trial. This is a serious trial, said Pam Bondi, and they had this was one of the, items on the long list of improper treatment by the U.S. They bring him back. Surprise, surprise. Welcome to federal prison or federal jail in Tennessee, where you're going to face charges. And these are super serious charges. And although they'd said before, they're never going to let him set foot here. Now he must set foot there and face these charges. Until the U.S. was unable to keep him in detention under the law that permits it. The judge said he's not a flight risk. He's not a danger to the community, and wants to let him out to be reunited after several months with his wife, 3 children, one of whom special needs. At that point, the U.S. does the latest switcheroo and says, we're just going to take him and deport him to a third country. And we have the bizarre response from Abrego Garcia: please, judge in Tennessee, keep me in jail, because otherwise they're going to take me and send me to who knows where. And I've got an emergency motion, as he does, we've talked about it in another YouTube, to you to say they have to go through the criminal process. Now we have a whole new long motion in front of the Maryland judge, who has already indicated, I'm not sure I have jurisdiction here. You came to me because you weren't getting what the Constitution requires of notice, et cetera. And I made the finding you were unlawfully taken down there. And I said, you must, United States, facilitate his return. And they fought it tooth and nail, but it goes up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, yes, you have to. And they bring him back. Now it's not clear what she still has to do, but coincident with what's going on in Tennessee, he's making this big push in Maryland. So we have a long filing that basically sets out a litany of a, Kafkaesque nightmare of outsized proportions where everything bad has happened to him, and basically at the hands of the government. I have a Substack this morning talking about it, and it's really just remarkable. The executive branch is marshaling all it's got to just try to crush this one guy, and because he's a high profile case now, and that's because they sent him there by mistake. Okay, so he lays this all out, and he's making two kinds of arguments, and they're both really uphill. But just so you know, there's first a kind of, this shocks the conscience what they did to him. Defendant, I'll read from the brief, defendants' disdain for the law and legal process and their cruelty shocks the conscience, it does, and demands immediate sustained judicial relief and oversight. There are some judges that might go for that and sort of craft something and just say, after all that's happened to this guy, we're forbidding you, U.S., but we're now in a high-profile case where they would go immediately for appellate relief and would say, even if we did all these terrible things, that doesn't mean that we're not permitted to deport him now, and we're going to, and he can lump it, and you courts can lump it, because there's no law that you can use to order us not to. That'll be the first. And then the second is taking this order that was given by Judge Zinnes in Greenbelt, which said, and the Supreme Court affirmed it, they did say you have to remember there was fights about facilitate and effectuate his return, but it also said you must treat him as if he never had been unlawfully deported in the first place. That's his entitlement. And there's a lot of effort in the filing to sort of massage that idea, that weird kind of counterfactual, right? Instead of this nightmare that began when he's picked up and he's separated from his kid, and brutal. It's all laid out in the filing. Instead of that happening, he just went on his way that day and wasn't faced with the problem, and trying to sort of craft from that some remedy to say that what that now requires is that you not deport him. It's a really tough one, because it's that deportation, immigration generally, is very strongly in the the executive branch's jurisdiction or discretion. And even a guy who's been so terribly treated, on a different day, maybe if it were lower profile, a district court might try to sort of go out on a limb and fashion something. But this case is so high profile, will go all the way up and to the Supreme Court, I think. If there's an order entered by either of these judges forbidding the U.S. now from deporting him, and the overall sort of summary of this filing is just a harrowing, terrible recitation of events, but then a kind of sort of legal flailing to come up with something to get from shocks the conscience, to get from treat him as he was before, to the pretty extreme proposition of the court telling the executive you can't deport this person no matter what, even if you follow due process. They will now follow due process. They will take him to a third country, not the hellhole of CECOT. And at least offhand, I don't see in this long filing, as heartrending and poignant as it is, some kind of clean legal claim to keep that from happening. So the next couple of weeks, we've got emergency motions, one in Maryland, the one from today where the judge had the initial habeas corpus, one in Tennessee, and we'll see if the courts craft something by way of relief that keeps him from being deported, and even having a minute of freedom with his family here. He still all these months has been detained and not able to be with them. We'll see what the courts may come up with, but it would be creative, and it would have to sort of stick up on appeal, and that's going to be a tall order, I think. So this luckless total victim of government fecklessness followed by malice looks to me like it's going to be hard for him going forward still to catch a break, even though he so clearly deserves it. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.